You're listening to the SEO Mindset Podcast. Now, we are not your typical how to do SEO podcast. No, we are not. With the help of our guests, we cover those all-important topics around career development, personal growth, and mental health for those working in the SEO industry. You got to be working on your own internal algorithm, like what we did there. So, if you like the sound of our podcast and you think this is a bit of me, shall we crack on with this week's episode? Well, hello there, and a very warm welcome to the SEO Mindset Podcast with your hosts, myself, Sarah McDowell, and my fabulous co-host, the Zen Queen that is, of course, Tasman Suleiman, with episodes going out each and every Thursday. Now, this week, I get to sit down and have a fabulous chat with an equally fabulous person, which is, of course, Anna de la Cruz. Now, this week, we talk about her transition from working and starting off in the film industry into the SEO industry. It's such an interesting and insightful conversation where she talks about what she's learned about herself along the way, those transferable skills from both industries, plus so much more. Who is Anna? Anna has over a decade of marketing experience and 7 years of them dedicated to SEO. Her expertise spans across diverse industries, including B2B, e-commerce, finance, and healthcare. Anna's journey into YouTube SEO began in 2016 when she produced the Box Invoice podcast, gaining hands-on experience in the world of YouTube. She has written for the Women in Tech SEO Knowledge Hub and has shared her personal development experiences on the Rank Suite website. Before I play you this fabulous episode, just a reminder of how you can support the podcast. If you like what me and Tasman are doing, why not give us a one-off donation? You can do that by following the links in the show notes. And of course, we'd be very appreciative. There are costs involved in bringing you this podcast. So any support and help would be fabulous. And you can support us for less than a cup of coffee a month. Okay, without further ado, let's crack on with this week's episode. A very warm welcome to my excellent guest, which is Anna. Hello, Anna.
Hello. So happy to be here. How are you, Sarah?
I am happy too. Now, behind the scenes, there was a bit of toing and froing of making this interview happen, wasn't there? So I think we need to celebrate the first win, that we aligned the calendars, nothing got in the way, and we're recording a podcast episode.
Finally, we made it happen. Oh my God. As a person who used to be on set and record things myself back in the days of pre-SEO, I can honestly say you have my full sympathy, and I will always be understanding. It's not easy to get people on the same page to kind of do a recording. So not even on the same page. It's more like scheduling things happening.
It's just scheduling, isn't it? Like that's a bit of a headache.
It really is. It really is.
Aligning calendars.
But we made it happen, and no one understands you more than me. So kudos to you for still making it happen.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Now, you've already kind of alluded to what we're going to be talking about today, because you just mentioned about being on set. So today, and I'm very excited for this conversation because I don't know where it's going to lead. I don't know the different avenues that we're going to take.
That's podcasting. It's awesome. What other podcast can do? I mean, if you're looking for structure, you got to go and work for, like, I don't know, maybe CBS or something, or BBC. Podcast is not meant to be structured.
We can throw structure out the window.
Absolutely.
But I'm very excited because we're going to be talking about your story. So your transition from the film industry into SEO. And we're going to be talking about skills, learnings, and other things that you have sort of learned or come across along that journey. So I'm very looking forward to it. I'm very looking forward to this conversation.
Me too, because I feel like a lot of people have imposter syndrome because maybe their background kind of holds them back. They probably feel like they don't belong in that field. They probably feel like, what am I doing here? Is this what I was meant to do? And even if it's not, even if you just started marketing, you probably wanted to do something else and you just ended up in SEO. So it can be very scary. So I'm very happy to be able to share my story and be able to give people the opportunity to really just know that the resources are out there. You don't need to be afraid. You know, once you see that this is something that everyone is going through, even the smartest of people or the most skillful of people, you know that this is something you can overcome too.
Exactly. And everyone at some point in their life will have to deal or have already dealt with those feelings of imposter syndrome. If you're pushing yourself or you're taking yourself out of a comfort zone or you're trying something new, of course that imposter syndrome is gonna creep in because, yeah, it makes sense, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it sure did for me. I mean, think about it. You're going from a very abstract, very free-spirited industry of filmmaking, which has its own structure, and we'll talk a little bit about that, right? Like how that helped me with SEO. It has its own structure, it has its own departments and its own way of bringing the visual art that we see as films and movies, or even music videos. Like, what does that entail? Who are the power players behind every production? So there is a lot that I had to take and learn from that. But in the beginning, it wasn't like that. I was very insecure about how am I going to transfer this skill into SEO. But it didn't come without some growing pains for sure.
And I mean, my first question, and the most obvious question, is how did that even happen? So you're in this film industry, and how long were you in the film industry?
I was in there for like 2 seconds, and I'll explain that.
So you're dipping your toes then in the film industry, and then you decide to pivot.
I was kicked out, Sarah.
Oh no!
Rejection is real in that industry. Let's talk about it, right?
Okay, let's rip the Band-Aid.
Oh my God, let's go back. Let's rehash that trauma again, like I did with every therapy session.
Are you okay to do that? Are you okay? I don't want to bring
no, I got over it already, I think.
Okay. Anna's okay, folks. We can talk about this. Rejection is also part of the journey, just like imposter syndrome.
Yes, rejection is part of the journey. And rejection is what leads to so much imposter syndrome in a way. So how did this happen? So after college, I decided to kind of see where I wanted to go. I had done an internship in Dominican Republic. By the way, I'm from Dominican Republic. Shout out to the Dominicans in the SEO if you're out there. But I'm from the Caribbean. I was born there. And I decided to go back to do an internship. And so the only internship I really had that had any sort of production was this internship in which I did a documentary, and it was live on YouTube for quite some time before I took it down because it's pretty outdated. And also we're dealing with different times. So I want to make sure that, you know, that story can be told again sometime, and this time with some updates. So maybe editing at the end of the video that this was old or something like that. So that is something I'm planning to do. But anyways, that was the only internship I did that had any level of production. So I did that documentary. It was counted for something and my credit. And after college, I decided to kind of start applying for HBO, Showtime, DreamWorks. I mean, you name it. I'm in New York, so I'm thinking that it's going to be pretty easy to find a job there. It wasn't. I was temping a lot. So I decided to do contract work. At that time, I don't know how it is today, but at that time you had platforms like monster.com, which was like a job listing site. Man, I haven't heard about.
Oh, I remember Monster.
Oh my God. I mean, it's so old. I don't even think it exists anymore. I have no idea.
I remember, it's so old. I remember the TV adverts as a kid.
I mean, it's
So-
it's such an old, and who even knows where it's going now? Right now, we have the Indeed of the world, and ZipRecruiters and LinkedIn. But at the time, it was Monster that I was using a lot, and Career Builder. I don't know if you remember careerbuilder.com. That was another one too. Well, I was looking for jobs there to kind of, pay my bills. I have personal issues as well during that time. Also dealing with my health as well. So trying to kind of find work while looking for other work, which was the film industry. I did ended up landing a couple of good gigs in between. So I ended up working at DreamWorks here in New York for a small period of time. Got laid off because DreamWorks was going through a tough time, especially with the streaming services right now kind of becoming really big. And DreamWorks really didn't have that much of a hit. Disney was very difficult to get in. I couldn't, even if I tried. So I worked at DreamWorks for a small period of time. I did Universal for also a small period of time, but didn't get the job there either after the temp position was over. So I ended up not getting a full-time position there. Then finally, I heard back from a different media company called Univision. Univision is Univision. Univision is a Hispanic market media broadcasting company. And they're very, very big. They're one of the biggest, along with Telemundo, which is part of Universal. And Univision called me and told me, at the time I was working in nonprofits. So I'm very familiar with the nonprofit space because also that internship that I did in Dominican Republic was part of a nonprofit as well. Long story short, I get the job here at Univision and I'm thinking I finally made it. If it wasn't the Hispanic market, I did not care because the Latino culture is very much a big part of who I am and is also it's also a side of me that I was very insecure of in the SEO space as well. But I love the fact that I was working for a media company for my people. And I was just like, yes, this is even better. I can relate. So it was an amazing experience, probably one that I would never not be appreciative of. But I was working in radio. And radio was a dying industry. I don't think it's dead because people still drive and people still listen to the radio on their way to work. People still listen to the radio to some extent. So it's not necessarily dead. It is. I see some radio stations being creative with YouTube now, which I love. And they're starting to put a lot of their live radio shows and uploading them to YouTube so that users can see it. So I'm seeing that a lot, which is great. But at the time, there was no vision of that yet. And I don't think anyone at that time really knew if they were going to bounce back or if radio was even going to survive the streaming services or the streaming, how big streaming was becoming, especially with like Pandora at the time. I remember Univision was trying to come out with their own version called Euphoria app where you can listen to music there as well and stream a lot of their programs. And it was just not working. And so a lot of people got laid off in that first wave. And they kept having more waves of layoffs because of it. Then they started to consolidate. So they brought in radio they closed down their offices that they had in 3rd Ave or 5th Avenue. I can't really remember. But they had their office and studios there in 3rd Avenue. And then they ended up having to move it to another location in their headquarters where most of the TV production stuff gets done. And then I got laid off. And it was the worst thing that ever happened to me because I really thought I finally had my foot in the door and it was only a matter of time. Lucky for me, though, and how the transition happened to the agency side was that when I finally got my job at Univision, I was working in radio, but I was working in the sales department, which means that I was working with production, promo, agencies.
So is this where SEO starts to creep in?
Not yet, but the agency life was. And being that's how I got exposed to SEO to an extent, there was a 6-degree separation type of thing going on where as I was transitioning out of like the media world, I also worked at Fox. I forgot to mention that too. That was a very fun job as well. But they were just not hiring me because I really wasn't making the connections that I needed to make. and I wasn't doing the networking that I needed to make. I thought I was, but I was making the networking and the connection in the sales and marketing departments, not in the in the production when you most need it. So that was, I wouldn't say a mistake, but that was just the situation I found myself in. And so it was very difficult to talk to people in production when you were in the marketing department, because production was always happening either in LA or it was happening in Miami, which was the case with Univision. A lot of their productions, especially for TV, were taking place in Miami. So there was just a lot that I was I was close, but not too close. And that's the reason why I ended up in the agency side, and thus here I am with SEO.
That is fascinating. And I'm sorry to hear that, because it sounds like you had some stressful times, some turbulent times, and I can only imagine that rejection feel of you're trying to make it in something and it's just not happening. And I don't want to get too spiritual here, but I read a book on holiday and it's called Solve for Happy. And solve is solve as an equation. Yeah, so Solve for Happy. And it was a really good book, all about happiness and the equation for happiness, how we can be more happy. And one of the things that is said in the book is sometimes life gives us gentle nudges. And if we don't listen to those gentle nudges, they get louder and more forceful until we're like, okay, I'm paying attention. So as you're telling me that story, and I mean, I don't know if you're a spiritual person, I don't know if listeners are, and I'm not necessarily, I'm on my own journey with that, and I wouldn't say that I am 100% spiritual, but I do I'm getting more open to it, but I do agree that life does nudge us and things happen. And yes, things happen coincidental, but some things aren't. And as I'm listening to your story, maybe life was just trying to nudge you into what you should be doing. And as doors were closing in the film industry, they were more opening in the agency and SEO world.
I would say so, yes. I'm also a very spiritual person myself as well. And one of the things that I feel like I had to come to terms with is just, you got to make do with what you have. And I think that's the reason why Stoicism really spoke to me. And we could talk about that later. But I think that's the reason why Stoicism really spoke to me, was because I had to work with what was in my control at the time. And I wasn't aware that I was doing that yet. It wasn't until I was a bit more mature. I'm a little bit older now. But at the time, I didn't realize that's what I was doing, because I had to push forward. I come from a very underprivileged environment. I'm not affluent in any way. And so you always had to make do with what you have, especially when you come from immigrant parents who brought you to this country, and you yourself are an immigrant as well. And you grew up in an immigrant culture as a Dominican, in an environment that 90% of the people you lived with and went to school with were immigrants themselves. So you were constantly under a lot of pressure. And so for me, when I was in that situation, I had to pull from that strength in some way or another. And it was almost divine to an extent, because it was kind of like being told, like, hey, you've gone through worse, you can get through this as well. So just work with what you have. If what you have is marketing connections and people in the agency side, then that's what you're going to have to work with. And that's exactly what ended up happening. I was just like, what is in my control right now? Because this marketing experience from working in media, working in the client side, how does a brand go to a media agency and say, hey, I want to promote my product on your platform because you have a show that millions of people watch? How does those conversations even go about? That was a lot of valuable insight that gave me an opportunity to transition into the agency side in marketing, because I didn't come with a background in marketing, but I came with a lot of hands-on experience and exposure that may not have been structural and may not have been orthodox, but definitely were valuable as I was moving into this new space. And that was amazing experience for me, especially working in the Hispanic market and then now working just in the American market, because I don't have a lot of Hispanic clients, or I don't work for an agency that specializes in the Hispanic market, right? But I was internally working in this working contract for some of these companies. I think DreamWorks was the only one where I wasn't doing marketing work. I was actually working in their production team, looking at scripts that were coming in, working with the head of that department as their assistant. So that was probably the only agency, the only contract job that kind of didn't expose me that much to the marketing side, more on the creative side of things. But still pretty valuable, right? All of that was pretty valuable. So I saw that almost like divine, almost like something spiritually was speaking to me and telling me, like, work with what you have. There's a reason why it's there. And then hearing that voice and just going with it. If you were to tell me, how did that came about, I wouldn't know. It's just one of those things where some people see it very early and take advantage of that blessing, so to speak. Or some people just continue to deny it and fight it in the way that you said, like, it's going to get louder the more you ignore it.
That is so fascinating. And there is so much that I want to pick apart. No, not pick apart. There's so much that you've said that I want to draw from. But we are at our halfway mark. Time has flown, Anna. Hopefully it's flown for you too. But I think this first half is going to be so valuable and so insightful for our listeners, because obviously everyone's got their own story and everyone has their own experiences. But I imagine that lots of people can relate to your story and relate to the different challenges or the different opportunities or the different experiences that you've had. We can all relate to that in our own different ways. Now, when we come back from the break, we're going to get more into, so obviously we've learned about your story, which has been fascinating. But in the second part, we're going to learn more about, so as part of this transition, I want to ask you more about the skills that you've got. And we've already touched on things like resilience and seeing those transferable skills and seeing what you can transfer. You've already touched on certain learning, so your stoicism. Hopefully I've said that okay. Perfect. And I nailed that. I think the eyebrows helped me. But yeah, I'm going to take us to our first break. I don't know why I said first break. We only have one break. I'm going to take us to our first and only break so people can digest this information. And yeah, we'll be back for part 2. How does that sound?
That sounds great. Can't wait.
Okay, join us back, folks. It's your pal Sarah here, just popping on to let you know how you can support the podcast. For the same price as a Starbucks, Costa, or your favourite local coffee shop coffee, you can give us a one-off tip or a monthly donation. All you got to do is follow the link in the show notes. And also, have you subscribed to the podcast? If not, why the heck not? If you do subscribe, you receive notifications whenever a new episode is available and ready to listen to. And while you're there, why not leave us a cheeky 5-star review or rating? Introducing Clear Narrative Media, a purpose-led media marketing agency that transforms how founders, creatives, and organizations share their stories online. dedicated to assisting you with all your marketing, content, and strategy needs. Their services include photography, consultancy, and social media management. Clear Narrative Media is here to transport your visions to life. They are on a mission to help you to create awareness, build visibility, and enhance your business and professional growth overall. For more information, head over to their website at cnmedia.com or follow the link in the show notes. I'm so excited. The live podcast is back, folks. That's right. The SEO Mindset and Search with Candour podcast are collaborating again. That means myself, Tasman, and our dear friend, Jack Chambers Ward, are recording a podcast episode in front of a live audience the night before Brighton SEO. So that is Wednesday, the 22nd of October. We kick off at 7 o'clock and the title is Social Health is the Key to Career Success. So come along to discover how nurturing social connections and being intentional with your inner circle can help and elevate your professional career and journey. This is a free event. There is no cost to attend. And we'll also be throwing in free food, snacks, and drinks. The last couple of events have sold out and we ended up with a waiting list. Bonkers, I know. So if this sounds a bit of you, so if you're going to be attending Brighton SEO or you live in or around Brighton, so you don't have to be attending Brighton SEO conference to come along to our event. So if you're around and you fancy coming along, grab your tickets today before they all go. We'll pop a link in the show notes so you can do that. We very much look forward to seeing you all there on the night. Anna, are you still with us?
Oh my God, do I have to keep talking? I thought we were done. I am so happy to be back, of course. I'll do this 100 times if you ask me to.
Well, I'm also, because I know we joked about the potential trauma that you were bringing back for yourself, but hopefully, I don't know, was it a little bit therapeutic?
Honestly, I have gotten over it. I think I have gotten over it just because right now the possibilities are endless for what you can do with your life. Back then, it was hard for me because I didn't see the resources. I didn't see like that light at the end of the tunnel, like a lot of people like to say. But now I feel like even film seems more approachable now than I ever did before, just because you can just do your own thing now. You don't have to worry about Hollywood.
I feel there's some branded merch here and you should get this on a t-shirt. The possibilities are endless for your life. That is some gold.
Yes.
I could just imagine that on a t-shirt, on a mug.
That's copywritten.
Might be a bit too long for a pen. You said it on the SEO Mindset. Is that no? I'm joking. Right. So Anna, we have a lot to cover in the second half because like we've delved into your story and your journey of how you went from film to agency to SEO, and that makes a lot more sense because when you first said it, I was like, "Say what? How does that happen?" But I mean, I went from dance to SEO, so okay.
Now that makes for an interesting conversation. Put a pin on that one because I love dancing too. Yes. I mean, I mentioned film, but I didn't mention why I got into film, which will be another conversation for another time.
Well, yeah, I feel like we need to stay on track here, Anna. We can't, otherwise we'll just spend
2 hours talking about it. Yeah, there's so many great things. I 100% agree.
So, I want to pick your brains now because I want to know skills, learnings, key stuff that you took away from your transition. So, we've already touched on transferable skills and you've already talked about resilience as a skill that you needed. What other skills and what else was around for you during this transition?
I wouldn't say these were more like soft skills. than hard skills, because the hard skills,
which are very important,
Oh.
guys. Soft skills are very important.
so important. Like, you have no idea how many people with hard skills I meet that don't necessarily have the soft skills, and it's hard. It's difficult to work with. I had the soft skills down pack. I was a self-starter, and I was someone who knew how to be resourceful with what they had already, which was the hands-on experience, that understanding of how how product ends up in as advertisement for a program, that whole transition, that whole contractual agreements and everything that goes on with that, even the traffic side of it, meaning how a commercial is scheduled to go live during a programming. Even that I had experience with myself working at Fox. So how do all of that, like working with what you have, help me in SEO? Well, in SEO, you're working with content. So there is a production value already integrated with the digital marketing that it is. So there's already that production content component to it. And as SEOs, our job is to figure out, right, one, the best content for your user based on the audience, and also optimizing your website for that indexability and crawlability aspect of it, because you not only need to have your content, but you also kind of want the search engines to index it and find it and index it. And then you also want to have the ranking signals for them as well. So when you think about that leading up to that content going live, the writing that goes behind it, the research, the keyword research, the audience, all of that were already skills that I had already acquired from being behind the scenes of these advertisement campaigns going live on these production TV shows and even in radio. And so that self-starter skill, or that ability to kind of organize myself and know exactly what are the moving parts for a piece of content to go live on the website, were skills that I was able to kind of ask myself, okay, where does this fit into this? So what I did was I became very strong at that. So project managing myself, being able to organize myself, being able to ask the right questions, being able to be proactive. I didn't have to know everything about SEO right away. But if I organized myself and I knew, okay, what is the steps that I need to take before we recommend the content, before this content goes live. And once I understood that, I was able to kind of create checkpoints for myself before something went live. And that is something very useful in SEO. People always say in SEO, you need to get rid of the checklist. I agree, you do, because not every client is going to be the same. Some clients are not going to require you to do certain QAs or to do certain things because they probably already have that team to do that. So it doesn't benefit you to have all those checkpoints. But having the ability to create a checkpoint for yourself, having the ability to create areas of SEO that you know either you need to be strong at and understand, but also checkpoints for yourself. What are the checkpoints that you already are aware of that you can't leverage in this process before a content piece goes live?
That is so, I just want to pick on that, having set standards and set guidelines that you can adhere to make sure that you're on track.
Yeah.
That is so important.
Absolutely.
So it's not always like a checklist of what you are delivering per se, of like the steps of what you do for an SEO client, but it's more about, okay, how do I want to show up? What is my internal checklist in a weird way, isn't it?
And for me, when I first started SEO, YouTube was my first checkpoint that I was able to kind of leverage already as a skill. Because before I went full-time in SEO, and this is something I didn't bring up because this is kind of goes into that whole gigs and stuff. I was working for a podcast for boxing. Boxing is I'm a huge fan of it, and still to this day very active in the sport as a fan. And I remember working for this podcast and getting a lot of hands-on experience on YouTube platforms, the titles, the descriptions, the tags, even the editing process of it and everything, the audience building, how to read the analytics on it and all of that kind of stuff. And for me, that was my first checkpoint. So there were a lot of moments where my team was just like, hey, we don't know. The client is asking us about YouTube. We don't necessarily know how to optimize for this. Anyone here knows? And that was my moment to kind of bring in some value. And from there, YouTube SEO became kind of like a specialized thing for myself where I feel I'm very strong there. And using that as an opportunity to open more doors for myself in the technical SEO space as well as in content strategy.
Wonderful stuff. Yes, could not agree more on that point. I want to not change the conversation, but develop. So in part 1, you spoke about, I'm going to have to say this word again. I'm not good with all my words all the time. Stoicism. That's a tricky word. That's a tricky word, Anna.
It is. It took me a while. Don't worry about it. It takes everybody a while. Yeah. After a while, you get it. But I've been like reading about Stoicism for quite some time now, watching so many videos.
Right.
I bought the book from Marcus Aurelius, Co-Meditation, which was very helpful.
Right. So, how does that link to your career and SEO and all of that learning?
Yeah. So first, let's start with what Stoicism is, right? Stoicism is a Hellenistic, sorry if I'm saying that wrong, Hellenistic philosophy back in the early days of Athens. And what we understand about Stoicism today is based on some of the works from Marcus Aurelius, but also some of the work from Seneca as well. But Marcus Aurelius is the most popular one. Marcus Aurelius was an emperor of Rome, and he wasn't necessarily a person that needed Stoicism. He was already very powerful. But Marcus, people are obsessed with him because his ability to embody Stoicism, even as an emperor of Rome, and what that meant to him. So for me, getting into the works of Stoicism, it meant, how do you fully take control of what's already in your possession? How do you fully control what you already have as in your control, what in that circle, versus what's outside of that circle, which is out of your control? Stoicism also talks about emotions and how you need to control your emotions in these times. And that's a very difficult thing because imposter syndrome and that feeling of lack of self-worth is an emotion that tends to be very strong and tends to lead us down certain behavior patterns that are not always very good for us. We start thinking negatively. We start slowing ourselves down. So how do you control that emotion? Not suppress it, because a lot of people think that being stoic is like, I don't know, a person who doesn't have any emotion, a person that is suppressing their emotion, like Spock. Here's a good example. People think of stoicism.
That's a great example.
I love Star Trek, by the way, but Spock is a good example of what people think, you should be as a stoic. Yes, stoic behaviors do make you look more serious than what you actually are. But really, the whole point of it is to know how to control these emotions, not because you're suppressing them, but because you're asking yourself, why am I feeling this way? Why am I feeling scared? What is going on? And that is very powerful once you start asking those questions.
This screams self-awareness.
Yes. Bingo. And that's what the Stoics want. The Stoics want you to reflect. They want you to be self-aware of your emotions. They want you to be self-aware of your behaviors. They want you to be self-aware of who you are, so that you can take the proper steps that are in your control to change that. Because we can't change circumstances in our lives. Mm-hmm. We try so hard to fight them, which is why existentialism and nihilism and all these other philosophies that came after started to dive into those things a little bit more. And so for me, it was like, okay, how do I take these principles and use them to my advantage at work? I already can control the fact that I study film. That already happened. But what I can control is the resources that I have in front of me and how I'm going to leverage them. So for example, here's one technique that I started doing recently as we are entering the world of AI. And I think it's important to kind of touch on what I'm doing there as well, right? How these principles has helped me. I can control the fact that I'm not a computer scientist or an engineer. I can't control those things, but I can control how I go about learning these things. In one, looking at the level of skills that I already possess, and two, understanding the level of skills that is needed. I don't need to have a degree in computer science or engineering to understand or have working knowledge of these things. What I do have is guides and resources on tools that kind of already built for that. So you don't have to worry about building the tool itself when there's already tools that help you create, automate things, be creative. So currently right now, what was one thing that was exposed to me that helped me take whatever ideas I had to the next level? ChatGPT and vibe coding, Claude, right? I took these tools that already are in my control, ideas that I already know I have, and also this ability to be defiant, which is a very part of my personality. It's like I don't take no for an answer in certain things, especially when they're in the betterment of me. So how do I go about learning certain things defiantly? So I decided to use Claude, build codes with that, and create tools on Google Colab that help me automate certain processes that otherwise I wouldn't be able to do had this tool not existed. So you have ways of being creative, and there's so many people that talk about them. And here I'm going to mention a few for all you listeners that are wondering who these people are. La Serena Story has a lot of great guides on machine learning. Some of the data I've been using and collecting to create certain, to build certain strategies or to even help with content optimization have been with some of her guides on different things. She talks about the Google Colab, Google Cloud APIs, and how you can pull those things into nice tables in Google Sheets. Use app scripts as well. That was my first exposure to app script, was reading some of her guides. So that's one way that you can start having control today. Another way that I started having control is reading about Brittany Muller, who is another amazing leader in this space as well, and very outspoken, and just someone I started following, I think, last year. And I've been loving a lot of her work. She also have a couple of tutorials that are coming out as well, and guides that you can start doing yourself. You're not going to be perfect at them now, but if you practice them, you could be. Another great person I like following too, who is more on the motivational side and less on like the detail side, is Dan Petrovic. He builds a lot of great resources that you can start leveraging to do your own research on how these systems work. So don't hold yourself back because you feel like, oh, I'm not a computer scientist, or I'm not, oh my God, like, I'm going to die. Like, no, it's like, control those emotions, have some control over them. If you need to talk about them with someone, say a therapist or a friend or a mentor, which shout out to Joel Orvin, who was my mentor at Women in Tech SEO, mentorship cohort, really was someone who put great strategies in front of me and told me, write them down, put them on the list. What is it that you want to learn? What is it that's holding you back? Where's your opportunities and where's your threats? And now this person taught me even a more valuable tool is how to organize that learning process as well. So things may start off unstructured, but they'll start getting structure as you start getting control over them. But while you don't have control over them, you're not going to see the value and the resources that you have right in front of you.
Definitely. And yeah, you're so right. I think sometimes we get so in our head and we think about all the things that we can't do. We're not a computer science, so we can't do this. Or we forget our own greatness or the things that we have achieved, and everything has a learning curve. I'm very sorry, Anna, but we are sadly out of time. Technically we're a little bit over time, but I just want to bring up one thing quickly. And also there are questions that I ask all of our listeners, and you've already answered one really by shouting out all of those wonderful people.
So many more out there that deserve shouting.
So many more. But something that I would just quickly like to touch on, and would be good to get like one sort of key takeaway from your brain on this. But something that I'm thinking is community is a big one, and finding ways to support yourself through mentorship or coaching. Would you agree?
I absolutely agree. Definitely leverage your community. People aren't meant to be perfect. So try to, again, work with what you have. Use these communities as best. You are going to notice people there that do have great intentions, that do want to teach what they know and want those to feel confident despite not having the proper training or not having the proper background to do these more technical and challenging tasks. So pay attention, look at your community. They're out there. They want to help you. And if you let yourself, they will.
There you go. Very, very wise words. Very wise words. Anna, I could chat to you for hours.
I'm always happy to come back.
Right, I've just had to do a special elongated episode. But we have covered so much. So thank you very much. And absolutely. Insightful and very useful for me. So I know that it's going to be insightful and very useful for our listeners as well. I'm going to squeeze in those questions because we ask all our guests, and I need to. So out of everything that we've spoke about today, what is that main takeaway? So what is that key thing that you want people to learn, or what is that one thing that you want someone to do tomorrow?
Give me a sec. What is that one thing I want everybody to do tomorrow? I want you tomorrow to pick up any literature that you probably feel has nothing to do with SEO and read it. And the reason why I say that is because a lot of the times we think that expanding our knowledge doesn't help the things we are facing today. Sometimes it takes you getting out of the details and see the forest for the trees to kind of see the whole picture. So allow yourself to learn other things. Don't just hyper focus on, it has to be AI. It has to be these tools. Like, give yourself other areas to grow as well. And read those things that you put to the side because you think that they have nothing to do with SEO. You might find a lesson in there that might help you get to the next step. So if something is urgent and you want to read whatever it is, a comic book, a philosophy book, a novel that has a very strong message. For me, it was The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho, who is a Brazilian author. And that book, till this day, and I read that book in college. Still to this day, is one of my favorite novels of all time. So today I'm asking anyone that's listening, if you have something you've been putting off, something outside of SEO that you feel may not have anything to do with it, pick it up and read it. You trust me, it'll do you wonders.
I love that because there's learnings in everything, and it just don't like put yourself into a box or a label of I can't read that book because it won't have anything to do with what I'm working on. I love that. And if you don't like physically reading, audiobooks, right?
I've done audiobooks on some of my favorite books too. I have yet to buy them.
There you go.
But they're audio. What should I get them? Now, my favorite ones I do buy physically.
There you go. Supporting the authors. But yes. Lots of ways to consume that content.
Absolutely.
My second question is you've given a lot of career advice because that was the whole, we learned about your story and your learnings and stuff. But if there was one short career advice that you would give to anyone and everyone listening, what would that be?
Read my article. I give great advice. No, I'm joking. No, I'm not joking.
No, you should. You've got to pick yourself up.
One career advice I could give to people is self-awareness. Please be more self-aware. Practice self-awareness in whatever, in whatever strategic way you can, or in whatever healthy way you can. Don't beat yourself up about it, but be self-aware. What is your strength and what is your weaknesses, and how can you turn those things into opportunities for yourself? I didn't grow into my career to be SEO lead at Chartist because I decided to feel sorry for myself that I'm not at the level of a lot of our favorite thought leaders. But it was more because I pushed myself to learn things outside of my comfort zone, because I was aware of where my strengths and my weaknesses were. So definitely one career advice that I feel every person should have is a very strong sense of self-awareness, a very strong, healthy sense of awareness, and building that to your advantage.
Yes. Love that. Very, very wise, Anna. You're a very wise person.
I've been through some stuff.
Love it. And technically, you've already given lots of people because when you were talking about AI, you mentioned a lot of people that I will link in the show notes. You also mentioned Joe, who was your mentor.
Yes.
And you were her mentee. Yes. But I do know there is someone else that you would like to do a shout out to. And because I'm a nice person, I'm going to allow you to do one more. Squeeze it in, Anna.
You know what? We gotta mention our homie, Mark Williams Cook. Honestly, I just started following Mark, I would say in the past 2 years. I really didn't know much about him before anything. I knew about the usual suspects, Van Fishkin, Lily, Aleda, but Mark was someone who came into my radar about 2 years ago. I would say two years now, and the reason why I'm in this podcast, I honestly have to say, was because of him. And really quickly, I'm going to tell this story, but Christina, who is an amazing person. If you're not following her, she has a program called Technical SEO, and you can learn from her. And she's amazing. She commented, like, what are some things you're trying to get over in 2025? And I said, imposter syndrome. And Mark came out of nowhere and we're like, hey, you should listen to Sarah McDowell on the Condor episode podcast with Jack Chambersworth. And I like calling him Sir Jack Chambersworth. And listen to her talk about imposter syndrome. And I just knew I had to reach out to Sarah, and this became a full circle moment. So Mark is not just a wonderful person in that way, but is also a very intelligent SEO. And I think it's worth that if you're trying to advance in your SEO skill, he's definitely one person to start following, not only because of his skill, but also because he's friendly. And for some people, it could be very intimidating to go into the more challenging areas on these thought leaders. And I feel he's one of the only thought leaders that is very kind in that area.
Yeah, and I agree. And as I keep saying, and it's going to make you smile again, he is a good egg. He is one of those good. He is a good egg. But yeah, super friendly and super approachable. Every time whenever I've bumped into him or ended up whatever conversations that is, he's always. Yeah, he gives you time, but also he shares so much as well. So I will make sure.
So much. Yes, it's more advanced, so it can be a little bit intimidating, but that's the whole point. And if you're going to go to anyone, start with him and then build your thought leaders in that space as you go. But I think he's a great entry point to making you feel better in such a challenging space.
Wonderful stuff. Right, Anna, I'm very sorry, but I'm going to have to... We've very much gone over, but it's all good because it's been a fabulous conversation. The amount of times, I think me and Tasmin just probably need to be like, do you know what? Conversations sometimes are going to be longer and it's all worth it.
It really
and
is. So much fun.
But thank you very much.
Thank you so much for this opportunity to give someone who has, so much to learn from her community, an opportunity to talk about her story, because there are people out there who may not necessarily want to be famous, but they definitely want to be successful. And I think it's important to kind of give platforms to everyone's story. So thank you so much.
I appreciate that. And thank you so much for coming on, being vulnerable, sharing your story, sharing your knowledge. This is going to be helpful to so many listeners. So big thank you to Anna.
Thank you.
Big thank you to coming on and trusting me as well. Right. Before I say goodbye, just a quick reminder of how you can support the podcast. So if you enjoy what me and Tasmin are doing, you can give us a financial donation. So we are set up on a platform that allows you to give us a one-off donation. And obviously there's costs involved in running a podcast. So if you can support us in any way, we'd be very appreciative of that. There'll be a link in the show notes. And another way that doesn't cost is sharing our podcast. So the next time you are speaking to someone and you're like, do you know what? They need to listen to the SEO Mindset podcast. Why not share a link with them and encourage them to listen to us? And that's it. Right. I am officially wrapping this up. So it's goodbye from me, and it's also goodbye from Anna.
Bye, everyone. Follow me on LinkedIn.
Oh, crikey. I nearly forgot. Anna. No.
Follow me on LinkedIn for like 2 or 3 posts every 6 months. That should be the hook in the beginning.
Do you know what? I will put all of Anna's links in the show notes. There's also a fabulous article that Anna has written that touches on things that we've spoken about today. It was one of the top performers on the Women in Tech. Is that right?
Yes, the Women in Tech SEO Knowledge Hub 100th anniversary, 100th publication anniversary. So, yeah.
So go and check out all of Anna's links. Go to the show notes. Connect with Anna because, yeah. You need to. Right. We can
go on this journey Anna. Together. It's not about who gets there first. It's about how we can get all there together.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Looking to create awareness, build visibility, and enhance growth for your business, organization, or yourself? Introducing Clear Narrative Media, a purpose-led media and marketing agency that transforms how founders, creatives, and organizations share their stories online. Dedicated to assisting you with all your marketing, content, and strategy needs. You can find them on all social media platforms and online at cnmediaa.com or follow the link in the show notes.